The company you're going to be viewing now is Actminds from Campinas, one of the most prolific cities of Brazil in the IT space. Frank Casale from the Outsourcing Institute and our partner will be interviewing Bob Hartman, who is a business development director for Actminds. Actminds specializes in Java and .NET platform development solutions, and now most recently in mobile applications, very heavily focused in iPhone apps.
Hi, Frank Casale here. I'm joined now by Bob Hartman, who's in charge of business development for Actminds. Bob, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for inviting me.
So I wanted to talk about Brazil, but Bob, you're from Pennsylvania. So what's the connection?
I was working as a lead consultant for Logica, big systems integrator out of London, England. And one of their major clients was MCI, who had just bought the long-distance telephone company in Brazil. So I ended up doing about a 9-month project in Brazil. And during that time, I met a lot of the IT companies that were subcontracting to this long-distance carrier. After I came back to the US, they got a hold of me and said, we're thinking about doing some global expansion efforts into North America. Would you be interested in giving us a hand? And 7 years later, I'm still engaged.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier today that you'd be happy to shed some light on a case study. So,
Sure.
So let's talk about that. It's certainly what our members like to hear most.
Sure.
Let's start with the company. I'm assuming you can't mention the name, but give me at least a good sense of the profile of the organization.
Okay. Very successful company in the Midwest, providing services to the healthcare segment. Had done minimal outsourcing in the past, always locally, had flirted with the idea of offshore, but never gotten to that point where they did anything. So they had about 3 IT developers working on site in their premise, doing development stuff, just 3 local guys from a small consulting company in their city. Mm-hmm. I met them at an event. I met their VP of IT. We engaged, had a couple conference calls, and it led to a deal.
Okay, so let me back you up a little bit. Let's talk about the problem. What problem were they trying to solve?
Their biggest problem was just not having the right skills in-house or at this small consulting company that they used. There were a lot of portal work that they wanted to do to expand their website and everything, and they just didn't have the talent to do that. The company in Brazil did, so that's what started the discussion. As far as, yes, I can provide you with 4 to 6 programmers with this skill set at a price point that's going to work for you. The challenge was that because they had never done offshore before, their number one requirement was the team had to work on site alongside their project team, their IT project team.
Okay.
They weren't ready to embrace a team working remotely in another country. So our first engagement was for 4 resources to travel there and work there for a 3-month period to do a finite project deliverable in their web portal.
Okay, so Bob, somebody wants to outsource some development for a web portal. Mm-hmm. At that point, it's kind of like the line forms to the left. There's 1,000 people in that line.
Sure.
Everyone claiming they can do it. And the reality is they can do it. Okay, small, medium, and large organizations, onshore, offshore, nearshore, India, China, South America, South Africa. So how did this organization end up selecting a provider in Brazil, with knowing all the options they had?
Yeah, there were a couple things that added to our value as a vendor. One of their first considerations was we had the skills. We had the client base, we had done similar work, not just in Portal, but in just about every technology and platform other than mainframe, COBOL. So that was their number one requirement, which we met and even exceeded. We had the clients, we had the track record with other companies, both in the US and globally. But the thing that really enticed them was they wanted to do the project under an agile Scrum framework. And the nearshore, with Brazil only being 1 hour off from New York, really added to their confidence that when our team was working, it was during their business hours. They weren't dealing with halfway around the world. They could pick up a phone, talk to somebody, things like that.
So having several meetings today with many folks here from Brazil, that's been a common denominator in every discussion of the similar time zone,
Sure.
okay, several hours or less, and the agile factor. So sounds good to me. Question is, why are most clients still not doing it?
I'm not really sure. I mean, everybody's interested. I go to an event and everybody's interested in Brazil and what they have to offer. And the time zone is certainly enticing to them. There's just a reluctance to change course,
Right.
to go to a new vendor. You've got that whole learning curve again.
Right.
And I think that's the problem.
Where do you see, Bob, the majority of the people that are just kind of at that tipping point going to Brazil? Where do you see them coming from? Are these organizations that have outsourced to more traditional destinations over the years and looking
Yeah.
for portfolio diversification, or is it more the first timers, as in the example you just gave?
I'm seeing more people that are outsourcing today and are just looking for options and alternatives. And I think that's clearly it. They're hearing a lot of press about Brazil and the time zone and the reasonable cost structure. And I think they're just starting to engage at these events with us at the booth, when we man a booth, and start talking about what's available and what they can do.
Another thing I hear, another common factor I hear is kind of the cultural compatibility.
Yes.
Can you talk? Do you feel that's real, and how would you describe that? It's a tough thing to describe.
I'd feel it's real. My experience when I was down there doing that project, I was very, very surprised that, Brazil is very much like the United States, grew through immigration. I don't think I ever met so many Italians in my life as I did when I went to Brazil. There's as many down there, I think, as there are in the United States. English is clearly the second language, where a lot of people think it's probably Spanish because they're surrounded by Spanish-speaking countries. But every company that I know of in Brazil is making major investment in English language lessons for their employees, where an English teacher will come in to their location and spend an hour a couple times a week teaching English so that they can communicate. So it's definitely a benefit.
Okay, so let's say someone's considering Brazil, why should they consider Actminds?
Very successful, U.S. corporation out of Philadelphia, been doing business in the United States for 16 years, have all the skill sets that a company would need today, again, other than, mainframe, COBOL, all the leading technologies, very big in Microsoft, Java, all the tools. We've even done projects on Ruby on Rails and PHP. So good skills, great track record, great references out there of companies that we've been successful with before, both globally and in the United States. Good location, and that's about it.
Okay, great.
A lot of good reasons to take a look at them.
Great. So thanks for joining us, Bob.
Thank you.
So there you have it. Just a handful of more reasons to consider Brazil if you haven't already. The time zone benefit seems to be common denominator today. There's discussion around agile computing and the capabilities there, quality, cultural compatibility, and as we're learning here now, there's a heck of a lot of Italians there. One more good reason.